Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. I am your host, Lucas Draga, Solution Specialist here at AgilePoint, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now before we get started, let's give your colleagues another moment or two to dial in, and then we'll go ahead and jump in. All right, it looks like everyone is more or less settled in. So before we get started here, some quick housekeeping items. You've probably noticed that this is a webinar session, and as such, your lines have been muted. Now that being said, we do want to encourage interaction, and the best way to do that is by using the questions panel in your Zoom console. And if we don't get a chance to answer your question throughout the course of the webinar today, we have a few moments at the end to go over those questions as a group. Now, as far as today's conversation goes, we have a great session lined up for you today, and it's a topic that has been extremely popular among our customers as of late, and that is building applications that leverage collaboration software. Now, while we'll touch on other collaboration tools that AgilePoint supports, today we will focus in on apps for messaging software like Slack and Microsoft Teams. We'll discuss a few different types of applications, some things to think about when building these apps, and most importantly, why these applications are at the top of the priority list for some of our largest customers. So with that being said, there will be two major pieces to today's conversation. At first, we'll cover some of the concepts you'll see throughout the later portions of the webinar, share some of those insights that we mentioned, and tell you a little bit about the demos that you'll see later on. During the second half, we'll run through two different types of collaboration-centric applications and tell you a little bit about what it took to build them. And lastly here, before we get started, I know that many of you joined us for the wildly successful workshop webinar series, where we showed a real-world example of building an application in under 20 minutes. This was driven entirely by your feedback, and as is the case with this showcase webinar series, where we'll continue to highlight some of the most popular use cases amongst our customer base. Now that being said, the success of this series depends on your feedback. So if you have ideas or suggestions, we'd love to hear them. Drop us a suggestion in the chat or send me an email to the address you see on screen. So speaking of that workshop webinar series, we started our journey in what we'll call small apps. But don't let the name fool you. These applications might be data-driven or not have any workflow. They could be a mobile app, or simply they could make entering and maintaining data in a database or CRM system so much easier. And oftentimes, these can number in the hundreds, or in some cases thousands, across an organization. More recently, we covered how AgilePoint can be used to extend or build entirely new core business applications that handle critical workloads in your organization. And we'll be sure to include a link for all of these previous webinars as a part of our follow-up a little later on today. But for today, we're going to focus on the middle ground of application development, which is increasingly become known as digital process automation. These apps may not be as large and complex as a core business app, but their impact on customer and employee experience is undeniable. And they also just happen to make work so much easier. But as you're seeing here from the coverage in this graphic, AgilePoint is a highly versatile platform, and that's really the vision that we have for the app development market. To give you and your teams an ability to build skills against a single platform, and in turn, roll out a wide variety of applications to accelerate your transition to becoming a digital business and to develop a sustained competitive advantage in your marketplace. So as you know, the collaboration space is a very broad market that can touch every area of an organization. It can be your productivity tool like Office 365 or the G Suite, your task and project management tools like Trello or Asana, unified communications, or, as is the case for today's conversation, your team messaging or chat platform. So for today's conversation, we'll focus in on a few different types of applications, what we'll call purposeful collaboration and chatbots, with the latter really being more of a delivery mechanism or a channel for your application, rather than an application itself. So for purposeful collaboration, these are applications that leverage chat and messaging tools as a part of a larger use case. And a great example of that is one that we'll show later on in the session, and an application that's in production at some of our largest customers, which helps them manage the idea or innovation process from inception all the way through to execution. And the second, Chatbots, is really about delivering familiar application functionality in a much more natural and conversational style. These chatbots can be deployed in multiple channels, as we'll discuss, but at a high level, will deliver all of the same functionality you'd expect from an AgilePoint application, with the added benefit of avoiding information overload, where you're staring at a massive form and simply overwhelmed by the number of fields and data points presented to you. So before we dive in here, let's quickly review some of the most popular collaboration tools supported by AgilePoint off the shelf. Now, if we're missing anything, drop us a comment and let us know which tools you'd like included in a subsequent release. So in preparation for this webinar, I sat down with some of our largest customers and prospects to get their take and have them share with me why this emerging area is deemed absolutely crucial across all areas of their business. So why are these applications so important, and why are they at the top of priority lists? Well, it all boiled down to two major categories. The first being to increase return on investment in existing technology offerings. With all of the organizations that I spoke with, nearly all of them had multiple messaging tools in place. Some had been brought in via acquisition, others had been purchased as a part of Shadow IT. And with so many choices for an average end user to choose from, it's no surprise that many of them cited collaboration fatigue as a major driver. By building applications around the tools meant to keep the organization up to date, they're able to deliver much higher levels of ROI versus a purely messaging approach. Some of the larger organizations I spoke with cited improving employee experience as a primary driver for these types of applications. And really, it's for a number of reasons, right? Not only because of the direct correlation that employee experience has with customer experience, but also because they viewed these types of solutions as advantageous for both attracting new talent, but also to retain existing valuable employees and to enable self-service wherever possible. And then lastly, and somewhat related to the first point, is to drive continued engagement and increased user adoption in the existing toolsets. If we can drive purposeful collaboration that achieves the right business outcomes, we can overcome that collaboration fatigue we mentioned earlier, and again, raise the return on investment in our existing technology stack. A true win-win. The employee gets their work done faster and more effectively, and the executives who brought in the technology look great to their superiors and their colleagues. Now, another common theme that I heard across the organizations I spoke with was the concept of leverage. If most employees rely on chat and messaging software to communicate on projects and keep various teams up to date, The next logical step is to elevate the messaging platform from a collaboration hub to an applications hub. If these tools are where collaboration takes place day in and day out, it only makes sense for them to also serve as the central hub for enterprise applications. It's for reasons like this that not only have we seen a huge uptake in apps around messaging software, but why we regularly have requests from customers and prospects alike to natively embed AgilePoint's end-user functionality inside of tools like Microsoft Teams. And then lastly is the ability to leverage familiar interfaces and infrastructure. And really, this is a challenge that we see in a solution really to many of our customers who have not yet fully embraced cloud. In some cases, without significant cloud investment, many enterprise applications can be very difficult to access without a VPN, whether it's for traveling or for remote employees. So by being able to leverage mobile apps like Slack and Microsoft Teams means that the enterprise applications I need are always at my fingertips without jumping through any hoops. And then lastly, as an added bonus, I can leverage all of the native notifications in Slack and Teams, which means I'm notified of work I need to complete and the software I use daily in order to communicate. And then finally, all of this was driving towards a singular goal. Of every organization I spoke with in preparation for this webinar, all of these reasons, all of these drivers for building these types of applications led towards a singular goal, and that is to accelerate their transition to becoming a digital business. Now, I wanted to spend just a few moments talking about chatbots because it really does warrant its own conversation. And what you're seeing on screen here is really the result of a lot of our own internal learnings in building these types of applications. Now, while there's certainly a number of different chatbot providers, we chose two of the most popular solutions for some of our own internal application development. So for the purposes of our conversation today, we're going to focus on the Azure Bot Service and the Lex offering from AWS. Now, while there's some similar goals in mind for these two types of applications, there's going to be some differences in the skills required for building these chatbots. We started off our chatbot journey by leveraging the Azure Bot Service. It's one of the longest standing chatbot platforms, and as you're seeing on screen here, offers the greatest flexibility in deployment channels. Now, the challenge here arose in the level of development skill that was required to build a chatbot using the bot service. It's very development heavy, so it's not something you can expect a business analyst or less to pick up and immediately begin building applications around. The next platform that we chose was AWS Lex. And again, some trade-offs entered the picture here. As you're seeing on screen, the skill set required to build chatbots with Lex was much lower, as opposed to the Azure Bot Service's very development and code-heavy approach. A lot of what we did with Lex was achieved via drag and drop. Unfortunately, and I'm sure this will change over time, was that it really limited us with respect to deployment channels, namely to mobile devices, Twilio, Facebook, and Slack. So while there are certainly a number of considerations to keep in mind in building your chatbots, start here. It will certainly help you narrow down your list of potential candidates. So with that being said, let's cover off a few of the demos that you'll see here. The first of which is an innovation management application, which captures new, innovative ideas from across the organization, carries them through various approval processes, and if approved, automatically provisions the right collaboration spaces and the appropriate team members to take the idea forward. And next, an example of one of those chatbot applications. In this case here, what we have is an onboarding chatbot that I can engage with to book an appointment with a law firm and pay for my consultation. So what we'll do, we'll chat back and forth with the bot. We'll explain the nature of my consultation and when I'd like to schedule it. and process my payment via PayPal. Okay, so with that being said, let's get into the demo. Alright, so for that first demo, we'll go through the idea management application that we mentioned earlier. So as you can see here, I have AgilePoint embedded into Microsoft Teams, which means that not only can I use this for my chat, but also to access all of the enterprise applications I've built using AgilePoint. So let's look for the application. So what I'll do here is I'm going to go ahead and put in some basic details about my new idea. I'm going to classify the stage as just capturing some initial data. And as you can see, AgilePoint has captured my name, my email address. So all I have left is to select the appropriate department and describe my idea. Now optionally, I can use this application to provision a SharePoint site, but we'll skip that step for now. And we'll just provision a new channel where I can collaborate with my project teammates. So the only step remaining here is to invite the appropriate team members, and then I can submit my idea. So from here, I'll go back to my task list and open up the approval step. Now in this case here, I'm playing all of the roles within the application just to minimize any need to log in or log out. And as you're seeing, all of the data entered previously has been marked as read-only. So I'll skip forward to the approval step and leave some comments. So now I can approve this step, and behind the scenes, AgilePoint has created a new team for me. As you can see, that new channel has already been provisioned with all of the appropriate team members invited to collaborate. So the next application that we'll run through here is the Chatbot that we mentioned. And as we talked earlier, right, this was created using AWS Lex, which is primarily drag and drop chat-based development. And we're using AgilePoint to drive the conversation behind the scenes. So this is a great option if you'd rather not hard code all of the responses, right, and intent for your chatbot, and want a much more dynamic chatbot experience. So here, I'm playing the role of a consumer who would like to schedule a consultation with a law firm. And based on things like the consultation length that I'm selecting, as well as the lawyer, I will be sent a bill to process my payment via PayPal and schedule the consultation. So I'll just fill in some data here about myself and the nature of my consultation. And you'll notice that AgilePoint is asking me for my email address. Right, the reason for this is I'm using AgilePoint in an unauthenticated mode using a capability that we refer to as anonymous forms. This is a great way to bring in external participants into your processes without needing to maintain user accounts. So if you'd like to interact with the public, suppliers and partners, as well as your customers, this is a great way to do that. So I'm going to input my preferred time for the consultation. And then lastly, give a little bit of detail around the nature of my consultation. And then lastly here, I'll just validate all of the inputs that I've made so far. And in just another moment, I'm going to receive a link where I'll open up an AgilePoint form and I'll be able to input my credit card details and process my payment via PayPal. Okay, so there's my link. I'm just going to paste this into a private browser here. And if I go over to the case details page, you'll see that all of the selections that I made, consultation length, my preferred lawyer, as well as all of my personal details, have been passed over to AgilePoint. And then if I navigate back to the Payments tab here, I can again input my personal details as well as my credit card information, and we'll go ahead and process the payment. So this concludes the demo portion of the session today. Let's do some Q&A. So the first question I'm seeing here is from Ricardo. He'd like Kaizala from Microsoft included into the platform. It's definitely something that we're seeing a lot of interest in, especially in some of the overseas markets that AgilePoint works with. So great suggestion. We'll certainly take that back to the team and see where that is in the development log. Okay, question from Lauren here with how long did it take to develop the chatbot application? Well, that's a great question, Lauren. This was a relatively simple chatbot application. It took one of our developers a little under a week to get that going. And I will say that a lot of the time that was taken to build the application was really around just gaining familiarity with chatbot-based development as a whole. Right, so there was a learning process, but I would say about a week to get this sort of functionality into the application. Thanks for your question. All right, so I'm not seeing any other questions for the moment, so we'll leave the line open for just another moment or so. But while we're doing that, I did want to point out that we do have the next installment of the Introduction to AgilePoint webinar series scheduled for early next month. And there's going to be some new additions to this next installment here. As some of you may well know, we are gearing up for a software update release that is hugely packed with lots of new functionality, integrations, form designer enhancements, as well as improvements on the administrator side. So be on the lookout for that. Things like webhooks, performance management for your forms, as well as the new additions as far as functionality go that we mentioned a little bit ago. I am seeing one more question here from Ricardo. And again, thanks for your engagement here, everyone. The next question here is around SAP integration. Absolutely. That's definitely something that we're seeing quite a bit of. We've been a long time supporter of SAP with our platform. So we'll certainly build that in to the webinar schedule. Thanks again, Ricardo. All right, so I'm not seeing any other questions for the moment. Thanks again, everyone, for your questions and your comments. Until next time.